Hey there, and welcome to my casual gamer's guide to Halo Combat Evolved Legendary Deathless, where I'm going to show you how to get through some of Halo CE's most difficult combat encounters and execute all the speedrun tricks to get through the game without dying on Legendary difficulty. When I first started attempting this challenge, I was running the full intended route without using any of the tricks to skip any level sections, and I did get pretty far, even to the engineering deck in the MA twice. But during these attempts, I became extremely frustrated with all the cheap, chaotic bullshit that this game can throw at you. Of course, I'm referring to the flood combat forms with shotguns that can one-hit kill you when you're at full HP from across the room, a rocket launcher flood, marines blowing you up with grenades, and of course, the dreaded grenade explosion chain reactions that can take you out from all the way across the map. Those runs were taking about 4 to 5 hours per attempt, and it was getting really demoralizing to be one hit by a shotgun flood, or be blown up from 100 feet away by a flood infection form and a pile of grenades on the floor at the very end of the game. Therefore, to shorten the time each attempt would take, I started slowly incorporating speedrun techniques into my runs, and this really reinvigorated my interest in the challenge. I wouldn't say the tricks make the run a whole lot easier necessarily, as many of them require a decent amount of precision, and failing them can kill you, which will force you to restart the run, obviously. Therefore, they require some practice, as well as a bit of understanding about the game to get down, which is what I'm hoping to convey with this guide to new players who have never really attempted challenge runs before in their favorite games, in this case Halo CE. In this guide, I'm not only going to just be explaining what I'm doing in the run, but through the magic of editing, I'll also be highlighting all of the invisible lineups and triggers that we need to hit to complete a successful Deathless run. Anyway, that's enough background. Grab your favorite beverage, get comfortable, and get ready to learn how to run Halo CE on Legendary without dying.
Come on, we've got to get the hell out of here!
Positions Alpha and Sierra. Sensors show inbound Covenant boarding craft. Stand by to repel boarders.
You'll notice that I'm trying to optimize my movement here by bunny hopping and deflecting my big green head off the ceiling to go faster, as well as jumping around obstacles like Chip's Dubbo here. At this point in my Deathless attempts, I'm just absolutely sick of playing POA, so I'm definitely trying to get through as fast as possible.
How did I sign on for this kid?
And now we're picking up the magically disappearing Magnum from Keys, and then we're going to run back the way we came and into the mess hall. If you're fast enough, Chief won't pull out the Magnum, and you also won't have to fight a small grunt squad in the dark hallway.
Those Marines could use some help, Chief. Do what you do best.
Now we have the first manifestation of RNG in the game, where the enemies that come out of these doors are randomized. I get lucky here and only get 2 grunts, but sometimes the game will troll you and spawn 2 elites that you have to try to jump over while they're meleeing and shooting you. It's a lot of fun, but luckily if you die, it's only about a minute wasted.
What the hell? Did something just hit us? Move in!
I think there's a way you can get a consistent backsmack on the elite in the dark hallway by blocking the grunt's line of sight with the elite's body while running up behind him and shining the flashlight at a surface in front of the elite to distract and keep him turned away, but I never really got it down. I didn't think it was that important to spend time learning, so I just get him with the stick. We can skip having to fight an additional squad that spawns out of the end of the corridor by just running past some enemies. I'm not quite sure what exactly triggers the spawn, but it seems like leaving specifically these 2 elites alive does the trick. Here I wasn't keeping close enough track of this elite's health, so when I go to stun him with plasma, it ends up killing him, and now I have to fight the reinforcements in a pretty bad position. Although I am able to recover by keeping them crowd controlled with grenades. Thankfully there's a medkit hanging on the wall in most of these tough hallway fights, which will give you a significant margin for error and allow you to take more risks in trying to get through these sections as quickly as possible. A very consistent strategy to this intersection is just to stick one of the elites and then mop up the remaining enemies with AR burst and plasma. Then make sure to gather as many plasma grenades as possible before moving on. You'll need them for the next fight. The idea is to trigger a chain reaction of grenade explosions to take out this entire squad by throwing a grenade in the middle of them and then taking out a grunt, which will force him to drop his grenades that will later be detonated by the plasma I just landed next to them. I missed it here because I accidentally ended up sticking the grunt, but I'll cut it in an example of a successful execution of the tactic. It's kind of nice when you can turn the grenade chain reactions to your advantage, since they're likely to kill you so many times in runs. It's probably the thing that's killed me the most. You can see I'm relying heavily on the plasma pistol in these combat encounters, not only to stun enemies and drain their shields with the overcharge shot, but also by spamming the normal shot to stagger enemies while actually doing some pretty solid DPS. If you can fire the weapon fast enough, you can keep enemies essentially stun locked while you melt their HP. The fire rate that you can achieve is really only limited by how fast you can pull the trigger. Next up we have the run's first grenade jump. That skips a difficult fight. What you want to do is jump and throw a plasma right after you cross this doorway, and then jump off the edge of the landing. If your throw comes up a bit short, you can salvage your jump by waiting a beat and then jumping to the right. You should be able to continue as you normally would after this point. If you miss your throw completely, you can also climb up a few stairs after the landing and jump to the catwalk on the left. You might have to stun and jump over enemies to get away though. Most of the combat against Covenant in this run is going to consist of taking down elites with either plasma pistol spam or overcharge shots plus a melee combo, plasma stick, or headshots from either the pistol or sniper rifle. Then continue on to mop up remaining squads of grunts using the most convenient tactics available at the time. If you're completely new to CE combat, definitely recommend Hokybird's series of videos on the subject, which he appropriately named Hoky's School of Halo. He goes very in-depth into the mechanics and the AI of the game and the best tactics to take advantage of on Legendary. I'm going to go ahead and link that in the description.
All hands, this is the captain. Prepare to abandon ship. Combat teams, repel boarders and hostiles on our way. Good luck.
The life pods are launching. We should hurry. Warning, blast doors closing. The Covenant are destroying the life pods. We have to use the ship's maintenance access ways.
There's a way to skip this in the any % speed run, but since I can't reload a checkpoint due to the Deathless constraint, I have to wait for that to finish. I'm going to open this next fight by sticking 2 elites while they're still in an unalerted state. And that elite just trolled me by running up to me after I stuck him. Never had that happen before in this section. And now I'm just trying to stay alive while taking out the remaining 2 elites so I can move on. They're giving me a little bit of trouble here though. And I learned my lesson from the last time, so I'm keeping the elites stunned in place with plasma until the grenade detonates. What I just did there to double smack the elite is called a melee cancel. It's a really effective method for finishing off elites at point blank range. The way you perform it is by hitting melee, waiting for the melee to come out and hit the target, then throw a grenade to cancel the recovery animation of the punch, and then melee again. Just be careful not to throw the grenade too soon or you'll cancel your first melee. As a bonus, if you have plasma grenades equipped, it makes for an almost guaranteed stick. And here I'm just going to skip that one pod of enemies, go right to these grunts on the side, and then I'm going to try to blow this other squad up with grenades so I can move past to the end section and finish the level as quickly as possible because I hate POA at this point. I get a pretty good stick, but it didn't chain and it didn't take any other enemies out with them, unfortunately. So I'm just kind of madly spamming overcharges and nades to try to take as many out as possible. Try to stick that guy. That was pretty good. Yeah, sometimes you're left with one who's alive if you're sloppy like I was, so you just kind of manage him. He won't be able to chase you back here, so just keep in mind that he's shooting at you. Now we're on to Halo, which is a harder than average level for combat. In general, the first half of the run is very combat-centric, wherein you need to focus on executing the fights well to progress. The second half is more about mastering the tricks for skipping combat encounters. A lot of the tricks can end up killing you if you perform them incorrectly.
Warning. I've detected multiple Covenant drops.
We're going to use a grenade jump to get over this cliff and skip some combat. Get up on this ledge, stand about here, and throw a grenade while aiming at this dark splotch. Then run and jump past it just as it explodes. Then once you're at the apex of your jump, turn towards the cliff and hold crouch to get up. Be careful not to move toward the cliff too early in your jump, or you'll scrape off the side and fall. You want to run straight and at a slight angle away from the cliff wall initially, and then turn towards it at the height of your arc. If you fall, you can crouch cancel your fall damage and retry the grenade jump, but you'll probably have to fight a Covenant squad that spawns in this clearing. This fight's always a little bit RNG, like sometimes the elites will be aggressive and come right at you, in which case you could just pepper them with the AR and do a little bit of backpack reloading, which I haven't talked about yet, but basically you just double tap reload and then switch. As long as you wait for however long the reload animation would take before switching back to the weapon you're reloading in your backpack, it'll be fully loaded by the time you switch back to it. It pretty much trivializes the combat in this game, if I'm being honest, if you're using the pistol or the sniper rifle. So now I'm just peppering the shields of these elites, trying to keep the pressure on since I don't have a plasma pistol. The plasma pistol kind of sucks at medium to long range, unless you're using the overcharge. Just keep that in mind because the projectiles are so slow. Here I'm trying to pick up as many plasma grenades as I can in preparation for the next dropship fight.
Dropship heading in. Over here.
These dropship fights are for the most part pretty consistent.
The cavalry has arrived.
Everybody's probably got their own strategy to dealing with it. Here I'm late, so I don't hit my usual setup. So I'm just going to try to spam nades and shots and try to ship the elites as much as possible to get them to hide while I take out these weaker enemies, specifically the Jackals, which are, in my opinion, probably the most threatening enemy in the game. They just do an insane amount of DPS with that plasma pistol. It's got to have the highest DPS in the game, and they're super accurate with it, and they shoot really fast. So you want to prioritize them wherever possible. Elites, for the most part, you can just ship them with any weapon. I like to spam the plasma pistol's regular shot, and they'll go hide, which will give you an opportunity to take out the rest of the trash mobs.
I could use some help over here.
Here I'm really late for the second dropship, so I also missed that setup. So I have to do a little bit of improvisation. Hitting the elites with the overcharges like I'm doing now can be tricky, but if you get them to stand still and then don't move, they won't attempt to dodge the overcharge bolt, which is basically a cheat code for this combat with elites at medium to long range, because otherwise, if you're moving around like you normally would, it seems like they'll just dodge every one of them, and it's completely worthless to use the overcharge at those ranges, but it's actually pretty effective if you know when to stay still and also when to fire. We'll see some demonstrations of that in the next couple of dropship fights. I'm actually on time for this next dropship, so I'll use my setup where I'll drop 2 plasma grenades next to the left compartment of the dropship to EMP the elite's shields, and then follow up with a frag to either stun them so I can finish them off with a pistol, or just kill them outright with the frag's explosion. Here I'm trying to get the elite to hide. I ended up just taking him out instantly anyway, but my main focus was not being shot by the Spirit's turrets, which can do a ton of DPS if you're not paying attention to it. Usually it's pretty easy to dodge, but sometimes they get lucky and they just melt your HP. I'm also on time for this setup. Out of the right side come a squad of 4 grunts. I'll just clean them up with one frag nade if I get lucky. If I miss one, I'll clean them up with the Magnum. And here I'm going to sit still to make sure I hit this elite. The overcharge. I'm trying to finish him off. Unfortunately, mouse and keyboard makes the bullet magnetism for the pistol almost non-existent, so it's kind of RNG whether or not you can hit him even if your reticle's lined up. Which kind of sucks for me because I already don't have the best aim in the world anyway, but we manage. Here I am just manipulating the elite's AI rather to stand still, so he eats the overcharge bolt to the face. I do the same thing here. I'm not really moving a lot, eating a lot of damage, but getting an instant kill out of the trade, which is really good because you don't want the elites charging you here. They're really dangerous, especially when they're supported by the grunts and the jackal. They can be really hard to get away from because there's a lot of long areas with not a lot of cover, so you can end up pretty exposed and get killed pretty quickly.
Roger, Echo 419. This is Fire Team Charlie. We read you. Is that you, Hammer?
Roger, Fire Team Charlie. Good to hear from you.
Hammer, we need transportation to the command shuttle.
There, I crouched just before hitting the ground in order to cancel the fall damage. You'll see that I use that a lot throughout the run. Definitely a lifesaver in some situations. Always saves you from taking chip damage. The only problem is if you time it wrong, like if you crouch just after you hit the ground, you'll end up taking potentially up to double damage from the fall. And you'll go into a hard fall animation, which will keep you locked down for like probably a second and a half where you can't move. So if you're in combat, enemies will just be able to melt you, so just keep that in mind.
Echo 419, staying on station. Hammer out.
This cave is not a natural formation. Someone built it, so it must lead somewhere. I've hacked into the Covenant battle net.
I've noticed that when going off these jumps with the Warthog, if you keep the cursor pointed as far down as you can, the Warthog will mostly stay level, even on jumps that you go off of that aren't level, and it'll keep you from flipping a lot of the time. So I would recommend giving that a try. I haven't tested it super thoroughly or seen if anybody else has noticed it, but it seems to work for me. For this room, I want to try to kill both elites here by running them over so I don't have to spend as much time hunting them down with the overcharge combo. So I will take the time to run them over just because they are aggressive enough to shoot at you while you're trying to hit the switch. The key to hitting enemies with the Warthog is to turn slightly away from them and then turn even sharper away from them as they start their dodge. You'll be able to easily slam into them with the tail of the hog this way.
How'd that feel?
I'm keeping those 3 elites that spawn up there distracted with the gunner, so they don't even shoot at me, which is lucky. Sometimes they could be more aggressive. Yeah, I wouldn't say like I'm the best at driving the Warthog, but I definitely have a lot of practice now. As you can see, when I kind of drifted over that ramp and got out of there a little earlier to avoid the enemy fire, which is kind of nice. Sometimes I mess it up and I'm just stuck there trying to turn the Warthog for minutes and just getting shot. The fact that the Warthog has such a slow acceleration really makes you a sitting duck if you have to correct a turn that you missed, or if you crash into something, or if, God forbid, if you flip. Yeah, I take a pretty specific route here to keep from flipping, in addition to pointing my cursor down low. Yeah, it's just annoying when you flip. I'm not specifically going for a speed run time here, but, you know, at this point I thought I had the timer going. I'm really just going for a deathless run, but I may as well get the best time I can, so yeah, any time that I waste by doing dumb shit like flipping the hog just kind of sucks.
Maybe they took cover in that structure. Let's check it out.
In this section, I crashed the Warthog into the side of this wall here so that the gunner's in cover from the elites that are positioned in the tower, while I help him take out the Jackals on the right. Sometimes there's a grunt that comes around the corner on the left, and you want to take him out before moving on so that he doesn't stick your gunner with plasma grenades. You really only need the gunner for this section, but he's kind of nice to have in case you miss enemies in the final area and need some cover. Here I'm killing the Marines because they're a fucking menace, and I'm getting revenge for all the times they've killed me, but also to skip having to do the rest of this area. It looks like I forgot to finish one off. I'm used to the crewman who will die in one melee attack, but he was a Marine. I just didn't notice because he's not dressed in the standard Marine armor. So the first melee didn't kill him. Whatever, lost like 10 seconds, big deal. And here I'm going to avoid having to fight the rest of the enemies by just jumping over this wall, get back in the hog. It's important to kill the Marines using indirect methods in that area, usually using grenades or letting the enemies kill them. You can hear that Cortana voice line indicating I did it correctly. If there are witnesses to you killing the Marines, either with a melee or a gunshot, when there's more than one Marine alive, it'll count as a betrayal. Once you get enough betrayals, all the Marines will go hostile, and I think it might soft lock the map, but I'm not sure.
Survivors detected. Marines are concealed in those rocks.
In this case, the Marines are in combat, so even your gunner won't register that as a betrayal for whatever reason. If I started killing them before they were in combat, they do notice the betrayals. I'm driving through that path to hit a trigger to skip having to fight all the dropships. If you forget to hit that trigger that's back there in the rocks, you'll have to come back here and you'll have to fight all 4 to 6 waves of dropships, which really sucks, and it's slow. I'm going to take a minute or so to pick off as many enemies as I can. From this position they won't be able to return fire, so you can score some free kills on them before you move up the hill, which will trigger all remaining enemies to converge on the Marines' position at the top. They can be tricky to deal with if there are too many, so I prioritize taking out as many elites and Jackals as possible to minimize the possibility of getting flanked later on.
This is Full Hammer.
You'll notice that I'm not going for headshots against red elites. This is because a sniper headshot isn't strong enough to break their shields on Legendary. This brings the minimum number of shots required to kill all major ranked and above elites to 2. Since you can also kill these elites with 2 body shots, I choose to target the center of mass to maximize the probability of scoring both hits. It's another strategy I picked up from watching Hokey Bird way back in the day when I was learning to play on Legendary difficulty.
Nailed it! Get out of here! There's our sight for sore eyes, Chief. We're in a bad way. We've got wounded here.
I'll call in a dropship to pick them up.
Yeah, we showed them. Hey!
You'll notice that when the elites drop out of the spirit here, they stagger over for a couple of seconds when they land. That's their hard fall animation. Gives you an opportunity to get an easy kill on them with a grenade stick or sniper shots whenever they fall from a high enough distance.
That's the last of them.
Roger that. I'm on my way.
Police traffic on Cubby settlement. I found Captain Keyes. He's being held.
Here I'm just having some fun with grenade chains. They're kind of pretty when they're not killing you unexpectedly in the middle of a run.
Touchdown on a desert plateau, roughly 300 kilometers upspin. There's our ride. Get aboard and let's get out of here.
Welcome aboard, Master Chief.
Now we're on to TNR. This is, in my opinion, the hardest level in the game for combat, at least in the route that I take.
The ship is currently holding position approximately 300 meters above the other end of this plateau.
So how do we get inside the ship if it's in the air? The Corps issued me a rifle, not wings.
Luckily, the game spawns you with more than double the amount of the normal maximum capacity for sniper rounds.
Once we get inside the ship,
So we're definitely going to take advantage of that to take out all the elites as quickly as possible.
Get 'em, Marines! Go, go, go! The Corps ain't paying us by the hour!
stick to the higher ground to the right. We should be able to recon the Covenant position without being spotted. I've detected
And always taking the opportunity to kill Jackals whenever possible.
to take out the gunners while I call for Marine support.
Get ready to move in.
The grunts are pretty optional, but since they're easy targets here, I just decide to kill a few of them.
Don't open fire until you hear the enemy return fire on us. That should let us keep the element of surprise.
Here I want to swap out my AR because it's hot garbage, at least on this level with all the medium range engagements. And then I'm just kind of mopping up the grunts, looking to pick up as many plasma grenades as possible. Yeah, just unlocking that grunt to death with plasma spam.
Get on it. See, they're not so.
Always taking the opportunity to swap out the plasma pistol wherever possible. For the shades, I'll either stick them with the plasma grenade or I will just spam them with the plasma pistol. Shooting the body of the shade does damage to the operator, so all you have to do is just kind of spam in their general direction. It should take them out pretty quick.
Oh man, you got
Stop. Motion tracker shows movement.
And taking out that Jackal before he has any chance to give me any problems. And then taking advantage of that elite going through his hardfall animation to try to get a headshot. Didn't hit it, but spamming 2 shots kills him just as well. I accidentally hit the trigger to spawn this Needler elite on the right. I'm usually able to ambush him with a stick combo, but he got the drop on me this time. But the elites with Needlers are, in my opinion, the most dangerous form of regular elites. The Needler will just shred your HP, and unlike when you use the Needler, the tracking on their needle seems to be just insane.
Heads up! There's just too many of them. Nice shot. Yep, he's dead.
Since I'm standing in this group of Marines, the grunt AI will prioritize throwing grenades, so I'm on high alert and listening for callouts that indicate that they're about to do that. It's also a good idea to listen for Marine callouts, because they'll regularly try to kill you with grenades too. Because they're a menace. For this section, all I'm really looking to do is kill the 2 elites that spawn here.
Cortana to Fire Team Charlie. The Chief has the left flank covered. Recommend you move up the middle.
I find that if you don't kill them before moving on, they'll actually ambush you in the pretty tough fight up ahead, which sucks because they'll flank you while you're otherwise occupied, and it's pretty difficult to recover from that. Here I'm manipulating these 2 elites AI by throwing that grenade, and then unsuccessfully trying to backsmack them. I get lucky here. And then taking advantage of the remainder of the camo to try to mop up as many of these guys as possible, prioritizing these Jackals. And then there's also an elite up on that ridge, up here on the right. Not too worried about killing all the grunts, but I'll get them if they're convenient, because you can just stun lock them with plasma pistol. Yeah, that wasn't the cleanest fight, but I did manage to crowd control them with that plasma grenade.
Alert! Covenant dropships are inbound.
Right here you usually get a spawn of Marine reinforcements, and then a small squad of grunts and Jackals. Once you take out all these guys, the first wave will spawn from the grav lift, The main strategy here is just to grenade as many as you can when they land, and then prioritize taking out the elite, which will cause the grunts and the jackals to panic, making them much easier to take out. You can hear there's another grunt left over on the left, I think. But basically what triggers the next wave to spawn is when there's one enemy remaining. It's good to take advantage of that fact. You can leave a group of panicking grunts and jackals alive so that you can take the opportunity to go resupply at that weapons cache over there to the right where all the red blood is spattered all over the place. You got one heal and a bunch of sniper ammo and frags.
Move hard!
As long as you stay on top of the spawns, how many enemies are remaining, to kind of predict when the next Gravelift wave will spawn, it's pretty easy to manage this fight. The reason why I fight from this particular section is so that I can retreat to the left where there's cover in case I get overwhelmed. It'll give me a chance to recover. Yeah, in my opinion, if you get caught anywhere else, you have nowhere to retreat to, and you'll be quickly DPS down and have to reset. The Marines were a little too efficient and ended up killing those enemies, so I had a little bit of an early spawn, but I just adapted here. Alright, now I'm getting ready for the hunter spawn that triggers after the last wave. You'll know it because there's a bit of a pause. That was a good takedown of the hunters, I think. It's weird that their body, basically, their whole body, the orange fleshy part that isn't covered by armor, basically counts as their head. Therefore, they die in one hit from either the sniper rifle or the pistol, which it's pretty much the only strategy I use to fight them anymore.
Copy that, Cortana. Hold tight, gentlemen. Bowhammer out.
If you keep enough Marines alive, you won't need to wait for the reinforcements to be dropped in by Foehammer, which will save you like 30 to 40 seconds. I didn't get that here, but it's definitely not worth resetting over. It also gives you time to go around and try to pick up any plasma grenades you can, or refresh your plasma pistol, get ready for the next fight. This is a pretty tough gauntlet that starts with one invisible elite wielding a sword, which kicks off a bunch of timed spawns that are random.
What? There's no covenant here.
Basically, the strategy is to kill all these spawns as quickly as possible to avoid having to fight multiple spawns at once. If you lose control of the room, you can easily get flanked by multiple spawns from across the room, and it's pretty hard to recover from that. If that does happen, I would just recommend going into one of these hallways and kind of just turtling out until you can thin the herd a little bit. So I'm just managing grunts and jackals with frags and plasmas, and then always listening out for any sounds of the elites, because they can get the jump on you. But they're easily dealt with an overcharge plus either a stick or a couple of shots with the sniper.
This is it.
And here I am just trying to stay mobile, killing enemies wherever they start spawning. I think there's about 8 of these waves that spawn.
Does anyone see him? That'll teach him.
There's a heal the far right end of the room in case you need it. This room can be pretty unpredictable, especially if you lose control of the rhythm of the spawns. Yeah, always looking to pick up more plasmas, always looking to recharge the plasma pistol. It's also a good thing to pick up grenades wherever possible so you don't get killed by grenade chains. It's definitely landed quite a few of my runs in this level. Especially if the Marines die, sometimes they'll drop frags, and that could cause me problems. Because they're kind of hard to see.
I had that one. Yeah, that'll teach them.
Yeah, we showed them. Good shot.
Keep it up, boys.
I also don't recommend running right up to the enemies behind these doors, because they will plasma grenade you and you can get stuck easily if you're not ready for it. So I kind of stay back and off to the side, usually. After the last wave, you'll see that checkpoint done. You'll know these hunters are about to come out. Just use the same strategy of using a headshot weapon to take them out instantly. Baiting them out, baiting out their melee attack is really solid because it gives you a huge opening and the hitbox is pretty generous. So here I grabbed the camo. I'm just running past these guys into what the speedrunning community calls the RNG room.
Wait.
In this case, I get lucky because there's a sleeping grunt spawn next to that far left door, which will allow me just to run past this whole room. But if that doesn't happen, what you want to do is basically manipulate the elite into running at the door for you, and then you can leave upon doing that. It's just a little bit riskier because sometimes there could be other enemies that could shoot at you, or if he has a needler, it's basically game over.
Wait. That's the locked door down there. The Marines are waiting on the other side. The controls to open it must be somewhere in this room.
We're getting ready for the next grenade jump trick in the run. Basically just going to equip some frags and get ready to throw them right at this column here. That will stun lock all the spawning enemies and allow me to run past. There's another elite up on top of this platform that can easily mess you up while you're trying to perform this next trick, and maybe even kill you, especially when you're running by him later, so I always take him out before I get started. And what I do is this lineup here that eliminates me having to time things out. I'm basically just mashing grenade and switch grenade this whole time, so I don't have to actually time it. Just removes the human error from it because I'm terrible at timing things under pressure. So it helps me. Other people may not have to do that, but if you're having trouble with the timing, I recommend following a similar lineup. Jumping up onto the top of that platform early skips a ton of enemy spawns, and it kind of breaks a few triggers that'll be useful later on in the level, but that skip probably saves at least like 10 or 15 minutes. It's kind of ridiculous. Otherwise you'd have to fight enemies all over these corridors. Coming to the bridge fight. There's supplies there on the left. I don't need them right now, but if you need health or sniper ammo, frags, it's a good source. Here I'm going to get the elite's attention and stick him with the grenade. I didn't hit it there, but the animation that he plays when he aggroes gives you a chance to stick him while he's standing still. Honestly, not the best execution of this room, but adapting. Yeah, the ideal execution of that room is to stick the gold elite up top, then jump down, and then stun that second elite there with an overcharge, and then kill him with a sniper shot, and then clean up the remaining elite and grunts. Yeah, you want to be careful with the grunts in these hallways because they will grenade you. So I'm trying not to fight them head on as much as possible. Just kind of grenading them from around corners and whatnot. One nice thing about fighting Jackals is they're not very mobile, so they're very easy to take out with grenades if you have an angle on them. Otherwise, overcharging their shield and then following up with another weapon attack is definitely the way to go.
We must be in the
If you have a plasma pistol anyway. Otherwise, you can kind of shoot around their shields, but I found it's kind of janky in this game. It's much more reliable in the sequels, I found. This room, I'm basically just taking advantage of the camo. I'm gonna backsmack everything, except for the gold elite, which I'll usually stick. Sometimes he'll move at the last second and dodge because he likes to troll and basically make it so that you have to fall back. I usually, if I need to fall back to another option, I'll stun him with the plasma pistol and stick him or whatever.
We should head back to the shuttle bay and call for...
If you line up here, you can usually kill them in 2 shots at the same time. These hallways are really frustrating if you don't move fast enough, because either the grunts will throw a grenade, or the marines will throw a grenade, and it has a really high chance of either killing you or killing Keys, which is an instant run-ender. Keys has like no HP, so I'm being really aggressive and just trying to move through these guys as fast as possible. While the marines and Keys follow pretty far behind. Oh yeah, they shoot me here too, so I take a little revenge. Definitely a frustrating part of the run. Definitely helps to listen out for the callouts. The marines will usually indicate when they're about to throw a grenade, but you don't really have any control over whether or not they're going to throw a grenade next to Keys, so yeah, it's kind of bullshit. I'm just finishing off these last invisible elites. Rather than having to go through and fight the next few hallways of enemies, the level will just end after these last few lines of dialogue finish playing. This is because we skipped a trigger when we used that grenade stack jump to get up to the 2nd floor earlier in the hangar.
Sorry.
Acknowledged,
This is definitely one of those parts in the run where if you need to, you can go ahead and take a bathroom break. It takes about a minute to get through all these lines of dialogue before you have to skip the cutscene and go on to the next level.
Stow the belly aching, soldier. Remember, you're a leatherneck. Cortana, if you and the chief can get us into one of those Covenant dropships, I can fly us out of here.
Yes, Captain. There's a Covenant dropship still docked.
Silent Cartographer is going to be one of the shortest and easiest levels in the run. The route I take skips about half the level, and what combat remains is fairly straightforward.
I believe that what they call the Silent Cartographer is somewhere under this island. The Cartographer is a map room that will lead us to Halo's control center. The island has multiple structures and installations. One of them...
Rather than charging up the beach and engaging the Covenant squads, I'm going to head left until I reach an overturned Warthog that's at the far corner of the island, which we'll be using for an upcoming trick. If If you like what you've seen here with the speedrun tricks and are interested in Halo speedrunning in general, you should check out Kronos' playlist that includes trick tutorials, general advice, and guides for setting up the live split timer, as well as the video capture software. I know I found it super helpful when I was first getting started out. Here I like to take the opportunity to fight this squad because I want to get some plasma grenades for this next upcoming fight, which makes it, in my opinion, way easier and makes the fight faster, therefore kind of making it worthwhile to take this little detour. Even though he won't chase me, I take the extra time to go for the kill on the elite because he'll sometimes drop 3 plasma grenades. Now, looks like in this case he didn't drop any, but I get lucky and I get a full stack of 4 from the grunts, so it all works out. More often than not, you'll get a full stack of 4, I would say. I've only been trolled on one run where I got 0, and that was annoying, because they really do make this next upcoming fight so much easier. We're about to come across a spawn of 3 Jackals on the beach up ahead. Here I'm just going to run them down by either cornering them against an obstacle, or using the tactic of baiting out their dodges and then sweeping them with the rear of the hog. Here all the enemies will basically be standing idle out here on this platform. What I like to do is just kind of peek my head up. Not enough for them to see me, but enough where I can see where they're standing. And I can usually get a stick or 2. In this instance I get 2 sticks, which is really nice. Because I'm basically just going to have to turtle up here and snipe everybody with noob combos and pistol shots. Yeah, the fact that I took out 2 elites early just makes this so much easier. The reason I fight from this cave as opposed to the other approaches is because the AI isn't capable of charging or flanking me from down there on the platform. This gives me an opportunity to take things slow and focus on conserving my HP for the rest of the level. Now I'm just turtling and playing it safe, using tried and true tactics of overcharge stun in combination with either plasma grenade sticks or headshots.
The Covenant are putting up a real fight. The cartographer must be here. My analysis indicates that the map room should be at the bottom.
We're going to be bringing the Warthog down here for the trick that I mentioned earlier, but first I take the time to take out this squad the old-fashioned way, rather than trying to splatter them all with a Warthog. This is because I really don't want to risk getting stuck by a grunt with a plasma grenade. I imagine it probably doesn't waste that much time, but it's definitely safer, which is always going to be my preference in this run.
And we don't have enough firepower to get through them.
So I'm not sure where this next trick comes from, but I learned it from watching Jervalen. Shout out, by the way. Most people just use the Warthog fling trick to launch themselves through the door before it closes, but it never really clicked for me, and it's risky because it can kill you. The method that I'm going to be using is much safer and is still pretty fast. What we're going to be doing is driving the Warthog back into that room and then right up against that window in that security room. Then we're going to flip it over such that the wheel is pointing into the glass, get on top of that wheel, and then we're going to flip it, which should push us through the collision and out into the lower part of the map. The overshield we just picked up will prevent us from taking health damage when landing from the high drop.
Good luck, people. Keys out.
We have to use plasma grenades here to flip the Warthog, and I definitely recommend picking up all of the plasmas found lying on the ground next to it, just so you don't have a possibility of killing yourself with a grenade chain.
Area secure.
Affirmative. Echo 419 inbound. Somebody order a Warthog. You know our motto. We deliver.
Yeah, sometimes this takes a while, at least if you're me. I found it to be pretty finicky. But you'll know when it's in the right position. It'll kind of just, like, almost click into place. That's how I would describe it.
Okay, let's move out. Let's go find the map room that will show us the location of Halo's control center.
There it is. Okay. And you want to make sure the wheels are pressed up against that window just like that. And if you can't get up here easily, definitely reset, otherwise that will kill you. Something I had to learn the hard way. And then I tried to land on the overshield to cancel my fall damage, but it didn't work. Doesn't matter. If you do this right, you won't have to really take any damage anyway in this next section. So we're gonna head down this hallway and to the right at the very end. And there's this platform that has these two Jackals on it. We're gonna blow them up with grenades. Do a little grenade jump on top of here. Grab the active camo. And we're gonna follow a pretty precisely mapped route that should get us to the end of the level before the camo expires. You definitely want to be careful with some of these slopes because you won't be able to jump off of them and you'll have to reset. If you reset, you're probably going to have to change strategies because you will have to fight some of these enemies at the end. So I hit that route pretty perfectly because I'm able to run past this last elite and into this room here. All you really have to do here, I found, is just stun the elite with plasma and then take him out with a frag. And then you want to combo that gold elite there, and that's pretty much it for this section. I'm gonna refresh my plasma pistol because I might still need it. And then we're gonna drive the Warthog up to the top and line it up so that we can ambush a few invisible elites that are gonna be charging us in a little bit. Sometimes there's an invisible elite that can spawn behind you for some reason when you're lining this hog up like this. As you can see, I'm waiting to take him out.
Roger. On my way. On my way.
And otherwise just mowing these guys down. You can manipulate them to keep charging you by getting out and then back into the turret. And it basically just trivializes this section. I usually only kill 5 out of 6 and then leave the last one for a overcharge stun. I got pretty ideal timing here because you can't get into the Pelican until right about there anyway, so it worked out.
Let's get...
AOTCR starts off with a pretty difficult fight immediately after the cutscene ends, so be prepared for that. I found that a pretty fast and consistent strategy for fighting this squad of 2 elites and a grunt pack is to charge up to this door between the 2 shade turrets as soon as you get control. And then basically keep them pinned inside the room by throwing grenades out in front of the door while shooting them. See, I throw a grenade, shoot, throw a grenade, shoot, keeping them stun locked and pinned inside in order to take them out. I take a little bit of damage, but it's not a big deal. The most important thing is keeping them trapped in the corridor. If they have a chance to get out, they'll flank you, and there's not a lot of cover out here to hide behind. So that could be a very dangerous situation. If that does happen, I recommend you retreat to the far end of either the left or the right of the chamber while suppressing enemies with the assault rifle and grenades, and taking the opportunity to pick off grunts and wounded elites with headshots. At the far end of this chamber are giant columns that the elites can't path around, so you can take the opportunity to turtle them in order to take back the advantage and save your run. Yeah, that was a pretty bad execution of this spot. I'm a little frustrated, as you can see. The idea is to plasma stun, grenade stick, but I can't do that here. Just one of those days, I guess. Yeah, a lot of times that elite will stand there, which is really good because you can just shoot right out of this, right over this outcropping here. Very easy to get a kill on them. Take advantage of the panicking grunts. They don't panic for that long on Legendary, but it's definitely helpful for taking out 2 or 3. The most dangerous enemies in this area that are remaining are these 3 Jackals. You definitely want to kill them with frags or overcharge. And then there's a final squad of 3 grunts that spawn out of that tunnel. And I always forget about that that grunt right there that just trolled me. Alright, this is the Banshee grab trick, which I think I hit here. Basically involves lining up precisely on this line here, right under this light, taking out these grunts here. You definitely want to flip that gun, otherwise a grunt will get in it and start shooting at you. And then you want to crouch right here as the wing touches the shadow on that cliff edge. And then it's kind of precise timing to move from one column to the other there to get basically the elite to hop out and give you the Banshee. It looks really hard to get, but honestly, like once you practice it a few times and you know like the visual cues to look for, it's pretty easy to get consistent. At least that's what other people say. I find that I can only get it about half the time. But that's why there's a backup strategy for skipping the rest of the level, which it basically accomplishes the same thing, albeit maybe 2 minutes slower. The skip consists of sliding down the cliff edge and landing safely on various bits of collision without splatting or sliding off. Start by jumping off the bridge to the left and crouching at the moment you make contact with this slope. Then head to the bottom of the shelf. Here I'm going to switch to anniversary graphics so I can get lined up to ensure that I'm always jumping from the same point and facing the same direction, which helps with consistency. Then I jump off the shelf while aiming at the edge of the cliff wall in the distance, then immediately look down and turn slightly to the left while holding forward. Slowly turn left while still holding forward. The idea is to stay as close to the wall without touching it yet. You want to wait until you're at least halfway to the bottom, at which point you want to turn directly into the cliff before hitting the shelf below. If you did it right, you'll always come to rest safely at the very edge. If you're too early in touching the wall, you'll slip off. Too late and you'll splat on the shelf. Once you land safely, run along the edge of the shelf to the right until you're just above where this slope at the bottom meets that boulder, and then walk off and hold backward while tapping jump. If successful, you'll launch off the slope, after which you can fall cancel to avoid taking damage. Otherwise, you'll usually bounce harmlessly off the boulder as a failsafe. Kronos, who I mentioned earlier, has 2 excellent video tutorials in his speedrun playlist for both Banshee Grab and Bridge Skip. It's always a good idea to watch different approaches to these tricks. For me, learning Bridge Skip was by far the hardest trick in the game to get consistent, and I lost a lot of runs to sliding off or splatting on the cliffs until I learned what exactly about the trick made it work. So I hope my example is able to help a few other people who are similarly struggling to learn it. Regardless of which method you use, skipping the first bridge makes it so that no other enemies spawn on the rest of the map. so the rest of the level is pretty much free from this point. If you're playing MCC on PC, I really can't overstate the value of Burnt's Halo Checkpoint Manager utility. It allows you to save a library of custom checkpoints that you can use to jump around to whatever section you need to practice at the time. It even has support for injecting and loading custom checkpoints with a hotkey press while in-game, so you don't have to constantly tab out of the game to use it. It really is a great tool. If not for that, I probably would have lost patience and given up on learning some of these tricks and would never have completed a run. I really didn't intend to ever speedrun a game, but like I said in the opening, I just was so frustrated by all of my, long hours spent grinding a run and then to be killed by just some random bullshit. Like I died on the Maw at the end of like the legit runs where I didn't really do skips by either a grenade chain caused by an exploding fatty flood or getting one-shotted by a shoddy flood. It was just stupid. I was like, yeah, either I'm going to quit trying this challenge or I'm going to learn the speedrun tricks and just do this right. So, yeah, that's the story of how a complete noob learned how to kind of speedrun a game, I guess. I mean, two hours is not a great time for this. I think the world record time is like just over 1 hour. But I wasn't really trying to speedrun in the first place. I just wanted to complete this game deathless. I was really inspired to attempt the challenge just for fun after watching Jervalin's Halo CE legendary deathless runs that he just completed a month or two before I started working on it. Yeah, Jervalin is pretty much a legend in the Halo scene. He's the one who completed Critical's Halo 2 Lasso Deathless challenge last year. Yeah, he's an absolute Chad who just puts out great content. I'll have his channel linked in the description. Please check him out if you haven't yet. I missed the button press. 343 Guilty Spark is a relatively nice and easy level that will give us a little break before Library and 2 Betrayals. I'd say the most significant gameplay here is going to be a skip that's actually pretty easy to execute when you know how to position yourself with precise lineups. The one thing that does give me trouble later on is some of the platforming that you do to skip a couple of sections and a wave fight. The reason for that is because Halo CE's collision interacts with your character's movement in a bit of a strange way, in that when you try to jump off of a sloped object, you'll usually slide right off with the game having seemingly eaten your jump input. That's why I take jumping off this rock a bit slow when I'm trying to reach the top of this ledge. I don't want to whiff a simple jump and look dumb in my speedrun, although I still manage to mess it up fairly regularly. I've heard you can hit this button in the air, which should save like 2 seconds maybe. I've never been able to do it. There's a squad of grunts and jackals in this hallway that I'm going to ambush with a plasma grenade on one end and a bunch of assault rifle spray on the other. This part definitely sucks, at least for me. I have to turtle it every time. It's basically a squad of 5 Jackals up here, 4 or 5 Jackals. And the problem is I kind of want to conserve my grenades for an upcoming trick. So I'm trying to just basically stun lock them with the plas pistol by shooting around their shield. And then there's this pretty big squad of them up here, down on the right. I've definitely been melted by this group of Jackals by just fighting them up here before. So I don't recommend being complacent about it. So I decided to use a grenade there. Alright, next up we have Reveal Skip, which involves a grenade jump with a little bit of a non-standard timing that launches you up and deflects you off a wall slope and lands you partially inside the second floor's level collision geometry, from which we'll be able to get into a much later section of the level. Once I'm inside the floor, I switch to anniversary graphics to make it easier to see the edge I need to get to next. Now unfortunately you can't simply jump to it, because if you do you'll be forced back in bounds and have to retry the grenade jump. Instead, what you do is release crouch while tapping and holding forward at the same instant, and you'll do a little hop. Wait a beat and then hold crouch again. You should now be resting on the edge. Next, I line these 2 edges of level geometry up so I know I'm in the exact position, and then I aim at this corner, then tap jump and hold forward at the same instant, and I'm through the wall. The reason for those lineups is that it's much more consistent and safer in the event that you miss the positioning or angle when jumping. When that happens, you'll just pop back into bounds and can retry the trick instead of falling out of the level into your death. Now I'm getting ready to jump off the lift early and land on this slope and into the overshield, which will be useful for the later fight sections with the flood. You're going to grab the camo and then do the first part of annoying platforming, where you have to jump off the very edge of here and then basically crouch onto that part of that column there, and then jump off that outer edge. If you try to jump in the middle, you'll hit like a slope like I was talking about before, and you'll just slide off when you try to jump, and it will make you have to run through the whole like intended critical path, which wastes the camo. You might have to fight a little bit. It makes you look stupid, or it makes me look stupid anyway, and waste time. And it just doesn't feel very stylish, you know. I'm gonna be safe and take out these flood here, these combat forms, so I don't have to deal with them while I'm struggling with the platforming. Now luckily I play mouse and keyboard, so I imagine the platforming is much easier than it would be for a controller player to hit these precise crouch jumps. And then off this outer edge here, you can see I'm looking at it. You want to stand on that and then jump. This skips a bunch of annoying waves of flood coming out of this door here. Yeah, I know Jervalen plays controller, and for the reveal skip where you have to do that little hop by releasing crouch and tapping forward on the same frame, like, I just don't know how you can even do that on a controller. And the fact that CE makes you stand up if you tilt the stick just a little bit too far. Basically, if you move too fast, the game will uncrouch you. It just sucks that controller players play this. The flood combat forms aren't too bad in this game. I usually prioritize shooting off their weapon hand. If I have time, I'll shoot off their whip arm, which is the left arm with like the tendrils on it, that allows them to do melee damage to you. Which is stupid because the hitbox on the whip arm is absolutely ridiculous. It will hit you from across the room. I'm surprised I didn't get hit by that one, to be honest. The flood forms you want to prioritize are the ones with the needler, because they can chip you to death mercilessly. Luckily there aren't too many of them. Any flood with shotguns. Assault rifle flood can be really annoying because they can basically pepper you with hits like that make your screen flash in a really annoying way that makes it kind of hard to see what you're doing. Pistol Flood can be pretty annoying for pretty much the same reasons. The human weapons are basically almost hit scan, so it makes them really easy for the combat forms to harass you at long range. And here I'm killing the sentinels because that's what the end level trigger is actually tied to. So killing both sentinels will end the level early. And now we have the dreaded library. This level is actually not that bad once you've learned all the fights. There's actually a lot less RNG than you might think, especially considering how the earlier fights go. Here, I'm basically going to make sure I run up to the monitor here so that he moves. If I don't do that, I'll have to run back to him later, which would spawn a bunch more enemies, which I'm trying to avoid by skipping the triggers via this grenade jump, getting onto this wall and then jumping over, and then basically doing this section backwards. Skipping that trigger that makes it so you just have to fight these two Fatty Flood and these two combat forms, which always spawn with the same weapons. That guy usually drops a frag. I'm kind of surprised I didn't get it this time. And then you just want to make sure you get under the monitor there, and then you basically skip this whole section, which is really nice. It also skips the flood spawning in this next room, if they even do spawn. It's been so long since I played this level the intended way that I don't even remember if there are. I imagine there probably are, but either way, the section is just ridiculously easy with that skip.
The security doors have sealed automatically. I will go access the override to open them.
So the main things to keep in mind are, on this level, number one, Rocket Flood. There's only 2 instances of Rocket Flood in the route that I take in this level, and they're all easily dealt with. They all spawn in the same place at the same times. Very predictable and easy to deal with. Secondly are grenade chain combos. I'm very careful anytime I kill Fatty Flood. Always looking at the floor, trying to pick up excess grenades. You'll notice that I don't really use grenades on combat forms too much, just because I'm kind of overly paranoid about killing myself with grenade combos. Because the combat forms drop lots of grenades. So I just, in general, when I'm fighting the Flood, don't use grenades unless I'm getting overwhelmed. Or they're far enough away that, you know, I feel like there's not a risk to doing that.
Puzzling. You brought such ineffective weapons to combat the flood, despite the containment protocols.
Yep, there's a Fatty Flood blowing up a grenade there. That's why I'm standing so far back. A combat form always spawns with a shotgun here, so I make sure to grab that ammo. And I'm also careful to pick up any dropped grenades before moving on, because they're vital for both crowd controlling groups of Flood at a safe distance, as well as performing some key skips later on.
The flood must not escape the installation.
The key to doing these hallways that's not really clear to you if you're just playing this casually is that you just want to run through, because there's spawn triggers in the middle of this hallway that if you're just trying to stand and fight, you're going to keep hitting that trigger and therefore keep getting spawns. If you just run through, it's actually like counterintuitively way safer. Here's a prime example of using grenades to safely take out large groups of combat and carrier forms as they drop down and get tripped up in their hardfall animation. You're gonna get 3 Flood jumping up here. If there's a shotgun guy, which I can't remember if this part is RNG or not, I'll definitely take him out first. And then just stay on the move, kiting these popcorn Floods so that they don't break my shields, while taking out the shoddy Flood around corners. You don't want to square off against a shotgun Flood. You want to fight, or shoot them rather, as they're coming around a corner, because that will minimize the chance of them getting a shot off on you, which therefore minimizes the chances of them one-shotting you. Which to me just seems completely random, because you can have full shields, full HP, and still die in one hit by them. I don't know if it's a glitch or not, or if it's just like the RNG nature of the pellets, and if they all happen to line up on your head. Definitely a game design oversight in my book.
Research facilities are most impressive.
And here I'm just gonna run past these guys as I kind of crowd control them by blowing up the fatty flood. There's a couple fatty flood that spawn here around this corner. Just don't run into them. And then there'll be a big spawn here. Just throw a frag. Frags have got to be the strongest here in CE than in any other game in the series. They have just a disgusting blast radius and high damage. They take out pretty much all unshielded enemies in a single blast. Frags are also much better for bouncing off objects to attack groups that aren't even in line of sight. And their shorter fuse time also makes it harder for enemies to avoid, and as a bonus, easier to do grenade jumps with. Next up, we've got the first of 4 time fights coming up where the game tries to force you to defend yourself against waves of flood until the monitor returns to open a locked door and allow you to progress. Rather than fighting the enemies, I'm going to walk down the corridor until I see this objective update, and then I'm going to fall back. This effectively triggers the monitor to continue on, but I don't go far enough to hit the trigger that spawns the combat forms. If you do it right, none of the combat forms will spawn, and you'll be free to wait out the timer in peace. Yeah, if it were me, like if I could go back and work on Halo CE, I would definitely advocate for taking any combat form that has a really threatening weapon, like a shotgun or a rocket launcher, and giving them some unique art assets so that they, you know, look visually distinct, and make maybe some like really obviously different sounds so that you know when one's nearby and you can react to it accordingly. Alright, here, rather than taking the intended path on the right, I'm just gonna go around and jump off these slopes, or jump over these slopes actually. I definitely recommend looking up towards the incline. You still have enough momentum to make it all the way up, and if you do happen to miss it, at least you won't go off careening into the abyss. Out of all the ways to lose a run, right? I've definitely died in a lot of stupid ways in attempting this challenge, but luckily I can say with pride that I've never died that way. This grenade jump I'm doing here saves about 30 seconds of waiting around.
Please wait here.
And then there's always a squad of 5 combat forms. I think there's 2 shotguns here. I didn't get all 5 with the frag that time, but I'm just waiting around the corner to ambush any shotgun guys. I got 1. Get the med pack back behind this column if you need it. And then take the opportunity to pick up the 2 shotguns for ammo and any grenades I'm going to drop. This is the fatty flood tunnel. Just shoot them at medium range with a shotgun, not a big deal. I like to kill the popcorn flood so I don't have to worry about trying to kite them in the middle of fighting these combat forms up here at the end of the tunnel. There's one that spawns here. 2 on the sides up top. You don't want to run too far or the assault rifle guy will just melt you. Definitely pull them back, and then when they get close enough, just grenade them. Definitely prioritizing shooting off their weapon limbs, especially the shotgun guys. Alright, in this section it's really helpful to shoot the flood as they're falling. It gives you a little bit extra time to fight these other guys. And then at the end of that hallway there on the left, spawn 2 rocket flood. You definitely want to take them out, but there's also 2 shotgun flood that follow you, so you definitely want to prioritize them, but while at the same time not giving the rocket flood a chance to, you know, get a lucky hit on you. It's a bit of a juggling game in this particular hallway. Some people pick up the rockets here. I don't. I feel like that's just way too risky. With all it takes is 1 popcorn flood flying in front of you at the moment you launch a rocket to end your run, and that's just not really acceptable risk to me. This is another corridor where you want to advance as fast as possible. The combat forms that spawn on the right won't pursue you, and the fatty flood are too slow to catch up to you before you reach the elevator at the far end. I just shoot those guys for fun. They're never a threat. I don't think they'll even walk towards you. The key to this level is always memorizing which fight's coming up next and knowing what strategy to use, which is kind of tricky because all these hallways look the same. Even now, I'll get confused of where I am.
I would conjecture that the others...
There's 2 shotgun guys on the left. I'm going to fight them around the corner. The rest aren't a threat, but they do drop pistol ammo up here, so that's nice. And usually some grenades. And then at the end of this tunnel on the right, there's going to be a group of combat forms. I like to try to draw them out sort of towards more the middle of the hallway, because there's going to be a couple of fatty flood around the other corner there down at the end that I don't want setting off a chain of grenade explosions. I think Jervalen might have died on that one time, or maybe it was me, I don't remember. Either way, it's a heartbreaking way to lose a run. Counterintuitively, if you shoot the fatty flood on Legendary, they actually do less damage to you than if they just land next to you and explode on their own. And that's because of the way that weapon self-damage is on Legendary. It's basically the same, it does the same damage it does to other enemies. Since on Legendary, your weapon damage is reduced, you'll actually do less damage to yourself with grenades and other things like that, shooting the fatty flood. Now I'm going to take out these 3 combat forms and then crouch into the edge of this cutout in the wall. Not sure how this works really. Maybe it's similar to the head glitch trick from Halo 2 that causes all AI to drop all awareness of you, but it allows you to wait out the second timed wave fight. Be extra careful about killing any fatty flood that wander around the corner and over towards you, because they're usually leftover grenades on the ground from the combat forms. There's a rocket flood that spawns here. I just throw a frag there and shoot him with a pistol to make sure he dies while jumping through the air, just in case he gets a rocket shot off. And then jump over here to the right, skipping the intended path, and taking out this spawn here. If you land right here on the edge where I'm jumping now, you'll skip this whole room here from spawning its combat forms, which is really nice, because there's not a lot of cover in that area and it's easy to get overwhelmed in my experience.
Their survival as a race was...
Alright, you're gonna get a spawn of 3 jumping up here. Take out the shotgun guys first if possible, and then kind of fall back and just let them come in, walk into your ambush. We're just gonna run through this hallway. There's a couple of spawns. Nothing too serious. I take a little bit of a safety pause there to make sure I'm not being chased by shotgun flood. But otherwise, you just want to run through this hallway to the end. Because once you pass by these doors, you're basically free and clear. Over here on the right, there's 2 frags and a med kit. You want to stand here in this corner to avoid aggro in the combat forms that spawn in during the 3rd timed wave fight. Nothing to do here but wait for the timer to expire, as with the other timed lock-in sections. It's a good time to check emails, get a cup of coffee, or change up your music or YouTube video playlist.
Oh, hello. I am a genius.
There's always shotgun flood that spawn there, so I always take them out with a frag to be safe.
Please stay close.
Don't be like me here and forget about this large swarm of flood at the end of the hallway. This is probably the most dangerous spawn out of these corridor sections. You can see I barely make it past them. What you want to do is ambush both groups of flood with frag grenades before they have a chance to react. Thankfully there's a med kit at the opening of the corridor at the top of the elevator, so don't sweat it if you take some damage back there. Like I was saying earlier, it's always safer to shoot fatty flood at point blank range than it is to let them detonate next to you of their own accord. Here I usually like to farm grenades just by fighting them over here around the corner of this slope. Definitely watch out for fatty flood that might come around the corner and blow up the grenades. You can keep spawning them by running further back into the tunnel if you need to spawn more for more grenades. Here I got enough, so I just go right to the grenade jump. I was trying to conserve my frag, so I decided to use a plasma there, but it didn't work, so I just saved it and used the frag. It's not necessary to do that, but I don't know, Skip's going through the tunnel and fighting the fatty flood. I don't know, I just like doing it. I don't even think it saves that much time. Maybe like 10 seconds, 15 seconds, I don't know. This is the last timed wave fight, and also the last opportunity for a break in the remainder of the run, which is probably about 40 minutes or so. So make sure to take the next minute and a half to do whatever you need to.
Ooh, that's a good idea.
The library is actually pretty straightforward and consistent once you learn the strategies for each hallway and timed wave fight. Yeah, this level is not nearly the hardest in the run. Like, I think everybody thinks casually it's the hardest level in the game, but it's honestly not. That award goes to 2 Betrayals. No doubt. I'm gonna be safe and take out these fatty flood here so that they're not creeping up on me while I'm trying to fight this last wave. I wish they would make a much more obvious sound effect when they're close by so that you can turn around and kill them before they blow up on you, but no, they snuck up on me and killed me a couple of times, I have to admit. And the motion sensor is kind of useless because the popcorn flood basically just make it so it's not even worth looking at. Here, I'm just being really careful to make sure I'm not killing the fatty flood next to a pile of grenades. I got lucky here in that there weren't really any grenades on the floor. So I can go right to this next skip. I line up right here on this corner here, or this intersection of these 2 lines, and then drop the grenade right when I hear the doors open. Otherwise, the door will open more out from under you if you try to grenade jump up there, and you'll fall down and have to fight a big spawn of combat forms with no shields. It's not necessarily a reset point, but it's kind of hard to survive. If you do get into that situation, there's actually a heal back where we came from in that hallway that you can go and get and still be able to finish the level.
The barrier surrounding the index will deactivate when we reach the ground floor. You may now retrieve the index.
I'm not sure why this level end cutscene is unskippable, but it kind of sucks when it's your 80th run or whatever this is.
Protocol requires that I take possession of the index for transport. Your organic form renders you vulnerable to infection. The index must not fall into the hands of the flood before we reach the control room and activate the installation. The flood is spreading. We must hurry.
Two Betrayals immediately kicks off with a combat encounter with 4 sentinels. I always start out by skipping the cutscene and holding forward to get in cover behind the glass as soon as I get control. The key is to briefly expose yourself to their beam attacks after charging the plasma pistol. While they're firing, they're locked in place and are vulnerable to overcharge shots, which is an instant takedown due to the EMP blast generated by the overcharge. If you try to hit them with it while they're in any other state, they'll likely avoid the shot, wasting precious charge that you're going to need for the next encounter.
We can't let the monitor activate Halo. We have to stop him. We have to destroy Halo. According to my analysis of the available...
I'm going to attempt to grenade as many of the grunts here as possible. They're particularly effective at countering the sentinels with their needlers, and I want them alive to help me distract and kill the 2 elites before they have a chance to charge me down, as the cover is very narrow in this hallway, and having to retreat would be very dangerous.
I'm going to search what's left of the Covenant BattleNet and see if I can locate...
I try to go for overcharge stuns on the elite, but I miss all of my shots. You can just brute force it by shooting him repeatedly with a shotgun to stun lock and kill him though. And then overcharges and frags are sufficient to eliminate the Jackals. Just watch out for their own overcharge attacks. This next trick involves a precisely timed button press to skip spawning most of the pyramid's enemies. You have to press the button once, then wait a moment for the patterns on the panel to stop flashing. Then press it again once and only once. If you accidentally tap it additional times, the trick will always fail. Next, throw 2 grenades over the door to the right to wipe out 2 idling elites. Then use your preferred anti-jackal tactics to mop up the stragglers. If you're too early, the switch will reset and you'll be able to try again, so play it safe and tap the button early until you're really used to the timing. If you're too late, the checkpoint will load and all the enemies will spawn. This will cost you about 5 to 10 minutes of some really difficult combat encounters. I used to use a shotgun blast to assist in timing the second button press, where I would fire the shotgun and press the button on the same frame, and then when the chief finishes cycling the pump action, press the button again. but this would always alert the elites and make them more difficult to deal with, so in the end it wasn't worthwhile, but might be something to keep in mind. I know speedrunners use similar tricks to time grenade throws for really complicated grenade stack jumps. Now we have to go back to the top of the pyramid and hit the button again to enable the rest of the level's triggers, which we'll need to hit in sequence to be able to finish the level. But this will also spawn back in all the enemies that we skip fighting, so be ready for that. I always kill these 4 grunts to minimize the damage that the Banshee takes while I take off. Then you have to fly through these 2 big triggers in the middle and base of the pyramid. You'll know if you hit the triggers correctly when the enemies spawn on the platform above. If they don't, you should be able to come back and try again. Just be careful of your Banshee's HP.
Machinery in these canyons are Halo's primary firing mechanisms.
Now I'm going to be setting up for a trick called BOOL, which stands for Banshee Out of Level. Personally, I think it should have been called Banshee Out of Bounds Skip for the memes, but I wasn't around when the naming of the trick was decided, unfortunately, so I couldn't put my 2 cents in on that.
I'm marking the location of the nearest pulse generator with a nav.
Banshee can be kind of tricky to get through the hallway. It seems to work if I face the wall and pull up to try to get the tail of the Banshee around the corner. Once I've done that, I face the wall again and then turn only slightly away in the direction I want the Banshee to go while holding forward. This will keep the Banshee in the correct orientation that will allow it to fit through. Standing against the pulse generator for a couple of seconds drains your shields and causes the sentinels to spawn. I get ready to ambush them by hiding behind this obelisk and throwing a plasma grenade when I see contacts appear on the motion sensor. If I'm lucky, the EMP blast will take out a couple of them. Then I use the plasma rifle I took from the elite to officially take them down, attempting to only expose myself to 1 sentinel at a time. The reason I fight them rather than running past is due to the way that I set up my Banshee for BOOL. Most players set it up in the far end of the hall towards the pad outside, but I learned it this way. When I'm trying to get out of bounds with the Banshee where I do, there's a good chance that the sentinels can fire at me while I'm occupied, and they can easily destroy the Banshee in a few brief seconds. I didn't want to have to learn an all new set of lineups to get BOOL working on the other side just to avoid this fight, but I recommend you learn the other setup so that you don't have to do this. So what I like to do here that's a little different from how other people do it is I like to line up the Banshee against the wall here. Other players just kind of like put it wherever out here and then they jump to it. You'll see what I'm talking about in a second, but yeah, they basically jump to it and they can fly it immediately without having to go through all this. But I've found that sometimes when I jump to the Banshee, it won't be interactable for whatever reason, so I can't get in it and I just fall through the level and die. And it really sucks to lose your run like that when you've otherwise done everything perfectly. And then I do a little bit of precise lineups here, and then fly straight up. And then I land on this little column rather than on the glass because it's much safer in that it's harder to slip off and behind the glass, which is an instant soft lock and you have to reset. I have a really hard time doing this trick under pressure, so anything that makes it safer and more consistent I would do. So land on that column, then jump to the glass, then jump to this other bit of glass that has collision, and then I'll kind of line up here so that I can jump off precisely without slipping off the collision there. And notice how I fall back into the level. If you fall short, you'll fall out of the level and die. So you definitely want to play sort of on the... You definitely want to jump like so that you're going out a little bit too far, if anything. And the reason why I do this lineup here is that so I don't have a chance of slipping off and falling into, like, or rather out of the level. If I fall like that, I'll just fall back into the level and I can retry without having to reset the whole run if I mess it up. You want to land on this little bit of collision here that skips loading in this outer part of the level, and then you get into the Banshee there, and now you can move on without loading any of the level's collision or enemies. Now you have to hit a sequence of invisible triggers in order to keep loading in the level logic that will allow you to complete the level. If you miss any one of them, you'll have to go back and find the exact trigger that you missed hitting, and then also hit all the following triggers. If you don't hit them all in order, you'll likely soft lock your game and have to reset the run. Froggerkist has a really good overview video that will help you get an alternative perspective on how this trick works. In that video, he also provides references to other tutorial videos that he used to learn the trick, including an invaluable guide by Burnt, the same guy who developed the Halo Checkpoint Manager tool that I mentioned previously, in which he shows visually where each mandatory trigger is in the level, using the level editor or some similar tool. Even though I did my best to highlight each trigger with green bounding boxes in post-production, Burnt's video remains the authoritative source, second only to opening up the level editor for yourself for locating the trigger boxes. Although I will say that in general, my approximation for each trigger box's location, size, and orientation is accurate enough to follow along with. However, it is just that, an approximation. End disclaimer. You can go much faster through here, like most speedrunners do, but I'm just being very careful because at this point, my basically from here to the end of the run, my heart is just pounding. I'm pretty tilted. When you hit this trigger and you see a little explosion come out of the pillar in the center of the room, you'll know you hit all the triggers so far and are good to continue. For this next section, we're going to have to load the outside part of the map that we just flew through. And the way you do that is clipping Master Chief back into the level while keeping the Banshee out of the level by doing this lineup, and then just mashing E while trying to keep the Banshee in the air by tapping backwards. It's a little tricky to get, but once you got it, you shouldn't mess it up. Just keep the Banshee pointed straight down, line up on this, tap backwards to keep it floating, and then mash U's to get in and out, or rather out and then in. And then you want to fly to the elevator shaft while you can still see it. When you're close to the level geometry, it will load in and you'll be able to see where you are, but when you fly too far away from any of these walls, you're basically in the void and you have to try to guess where you're at. There's going to be one more in this exit hallway that I'm trying to find. Right here in the corner. And then there's a trigger outside here. When you hear that voice line play and the nav point show up, you'll know you're good so far and can continue. This trigger here. There's going to be one more big and tall trigger right here in that passageway. And then you want to fly up to the platform. There's another trigger in the hallway, and then you need to hit the pulse generator in the back by just hovering over it, and then you'll be good to continue. Yeah, once you get the EMP, you'll know you're good. And then just go land on the nav point.
I've located the Pillar of Autumn.
And then I try to fly as directly to the bridges as possible by flying through the level, but a little worried about getting lost, so I'm playing pretty conservatively.
Systems on the Pillar of Autumn have fail-safes even I can't override without authorization.
And now you want to fly to the door on the right of the far bridge and then load in this section of the level by repeating that method of getting out and then back into Banshee while keeping it out of bounds.
Let's take care of the final pulse generator.
So as soon as we load this in, all of the walls are going to have collision again outside. So we want to be careful not to go on the outside, otherwise we're going to be stuck back in bounds and have to play the rest of the level the intended way. So we're just going to fly under the collision, and then I'm going to kind of aim towards the side just above the nav point there.
That tunnel leads to the next section of canyon. The final pulse generator we need to destroy is through there.
I'm just going to keep hugging the wall so I can see where I'm going, but without going through the collision. Then we're going to fly over the door and hover the Banshee next to the wall that has the light on the side. Be careful not to cross through the collision here either, or you'll be stuck on the other side and be soft locked. Then I line up between these two edges here so that I know I'm far enough forward, then aim to the right in the middle of this rectangle to eject at the correct angle, so that I'm able to land safely on this slope in the hallway we just came from. Then I hit the button to begin the door opening sequence while I run further back into the tunnel to trigger the rest of the level to load in. Shout out to Jervalen and whoever he was working with who discovered this. I really hated having to do the old method where you have to shove the Banshee between the panels of the door. It's a very finicky trick that requires a lot of precision, and I really did not want to practice that skip. I probably would not have attempted a serious run if I had to keep trying to get that right. It was that miserable for me personally. You'll know if you hit all the triggers so far if this letterbox title comes up and the music starts playing. And then you have to kill, I think, 5 Flood here in order to progress the rest of the level. I play a little bit safe and take out 2 more. I like to kill the Banshee just because he can pursue you and take you down when you're trying to fly through the rest of the triggers. Maybe costs like 10 seconds, but it's safer. You need to hit a trigger here, which spawns a bunch of enemies, so I immediately fly up because I don't want to get rocketed. And then there's another trigger right down here that spawns the big fight at the end of that canyon. I forgot to check that I actually spawned them, so I fly back to make sure. And then the rest of the level is free.
Final target neutralized. Let's get out of here.
I'm getting prepared to skip the upcoming cutscene at a precise moment, which will help us manipulate the RNG seed that will cause a flood combat form to spawn as a reviver, which will be crucial for a major skip in the beginning of the level. As soon as the loading completes, press and hold forward to prime the skip prompt, and then press jump when the lower left edge of the screen is within this range.
The Covenant network is
Right about here. Keep holding forward and walk as straight as possible towards the door. We want to cross the door threshold at a precise moment to manipulate the RNG that causes this combat form to spawn in as a reviver. We're then going to kill it in a certain spot and then position ourselves over it in such a way that when it gets back up and its collision gets re-enabled, it will push us through this wall over here on the left. I get in the corner, then I crouch and jump over the flood and line up along this second groove to the right of the gap. Charge the pistol and fire at the base of the stock to knock it down, then line up on top of it like this. And that skips pretty much the whole level. It's kind of nice because this is probably one of the harder levels for combat. Just like random chaos and exploding grenade chains and fatty flood. Luckily no rocket flood, but it's still nice to be able to skip if you can. If you do miss getting the flood bump to work, you can always use shield bump as a backup strat to skip most of the level. Naked Eli has a good video on this, but I'll explain how I do it to the best of my ability. What you want to do is clear all the enemies around the deployable cover shield that you can find in this chamber just off the hallway you can find the disarmed combat form in. Then you want to down the shield by spamming with the plasma pistol, and then try to align yourself in an exact position using lineups with the reticle. It's best to make slight adjustments to your position by jumping and then feathering your movement inputs by either tapping the movement keys or slightly tilting the analog stick. Now I'll show you the lineup I use. If you run 100-degree FOV, it should work for you too, but if not, you'll have to figure out your own with some trial and error. Align the top triangle so that it's pointing down into the edge of the emitter right alongside this deep black groove to the left. Line up the left triangle on the small black oval so that the bottom of the left triangle is almost touching the oval. Finally, make sure the point of the right triangle is touching the thick dark line and that the gap between the base of the triangle makes an acute angle with the second fin from the center of the emitter. Now you should pop up right above the edge of the wall. Don't move until you land on the collision or you might fall back into the level, or worse, out of the level. Then jump to the top of the nearby post, and then over to the far post. Then get on top of this edge, and walk over to the corner here. Turn and face the other corner and jump forward. You'll land on the edge of the wall below. Be careful because you can fall out of the level if you move too far to the right. I like to use anniversary graphics here because I can see the bounding boxes that roughly indicate where I should point myself. Once you're through the wall, you'll be on the Keys Bridge. You can continue the steps following the flood bump from here. As an important side note, if you aren't perfectly positioned during the shield bump, you can be teleported over this edge. If this happens, hold right or you'll fall to your death. We do have to kill all these flood here. It's not only nice to get the weapons, but they can actually kill you during the unskippable cutscene if you leave any of them alive. Here I'm just playing it extra safe and making sure they're all dead. Don't walk into that hallway and come back, otherwise it'll trigger these guys to respawn, by the way. Yeah, I want to make sure I have that shotgun. Alright, gonna trigger the unskippable cutscene now. It's funny, your actual, like, in-game character model is actually below this platform. So if you do leave flood and they attack your, the model you can see on screen here, and it dies, you won't actually die, curiously enough. But if they do kill the one that's under the platform, that will kill you and end the run.
You know what he'd expect. What he'd want us to do. It's done. I have the code. We should...
This is a pretty cool trick coming up. I'm gonna sort of do a lineup here. Where I throw a grenade as soon as possible, like towards the squad at the back that keeps them distracted, which allows me to run past that really hard fight. If you try to do it as intended, you're basically going to be sandwiched between that squad of Spec Ops Covenant and the Flood, which if that does happen, I just like stand at the back and wait for them to kill each other. But in this case, I just wanted to finish as quickly as possible to, you know, maybe get a good time. Here I pick up the Needler because it's actually pretty good against the Spec Ops elites who will throw grenades. While they're throwing the grenades, they have to stand still, which allows you to basically get a full super combine on them. Here that's not necessary, because I do take him out early. And then just take out the fuel rod grunt with grenades. Here I thought I killed the elite, but I didn't. Luckily I jumped over that grenade, and then just took him out with a shotgun. But yeah, the Needler's actually surprisingly effective against those guys. It sucks that it's not a very viable weapon in the rest of the campaign. Like, just the elites will just dodge it. Dodge your needles, like, way too easily. Here you can't die, so I just do whatever. And that's keys, yep. Good level, short level. The Maw is definitely a level I worry a lot about, just because of the tight corridors, fatty flood, grenades on the floor, random chaotic bullshit everywhere you look. Especially at the end if you have to climb back up to the 3rd floor to shoot the reactor vents. I've definitely been killed by really long combos of grenades and fatty flood that have killed me from, like, I don't know, 100 feet away. From the original fatty flood that I killed is just stupid. So even though it's probably the 2nd easiest level in the game, there's still enough bullcrap that you gotta be careful. I'm not even gonna chance fighting that shotgun flood, so I kill him with a grenade there to avoid getting one-shotted possibly. And then just clean these guys up with AR, backpack reloading, and the plasma rifle. Looking for as many grenades as possible. Gonna grab the shotgun. I'm gonna try to time a frag grenade right when this opens, so I can kill the shotgun flood. Being really careful to shoot the fatty flood while I'm standing as far away as possible to avoid grenade chains. Throw another grenade around this corner to avoid fighting the shotgun flood if possible. I miss it in this case, but I kill him around the corner. For this next part, I'm going to try to skip all of Cafeteria by going into remastered graphics and then crouching here behind this door. You definitely want to crouch. If you don't crouch, you can get knocked out of the level and die. And then I'm just trying to platform on these invisible colliders. Some of them you can see like they have like little lines as an indicator where you should jump. Definitely be careful when you're jumping on these posts. If you fall between them, there's no collision on the floor, so you fall through the map and die. It's pretty stupid. I miss it here at the end, which wastes about a minute, but it's usually enough to avoid aggroing the first Spec Ops squad and spawning in another in the connecting hallway. Start by jumping from the door to the space between these two lines. There's a collision plane that looks something like this. Then sidle over leftwards until you hit a small slope. You want to center yourself on the slope at its highest point. There seems to be a little extra collision in front of it that will give you a safe place to get a running start, and then jump to this line. Then follow this line until a collider stops you. Jump to the post on the other side, being careful not to fall in between. Then jump to the far post. There's actually a lot more collision than there appears, so just aim for anywhere on this general plane. Continue this process until you reach the 3rd table roughly in the center of the room. I recommend jumping to the long line of collision on the left, as it will give you more margin for error as you make a running jump. Now jump to the very end of this line over here. It doesn't have collision itself, but there's an invisible line that contacts it at this point that does have collision. Run along this line until you hit collision, then turn to the right and jump. Try to land between these two lines where there's a thin plane you can land on. From here, be careful not to run forward. Try to hit jump and forward on the same frame so you do a little forward hop. The collision on the door is pretty generous, so you should be able to get over as long as you actually make the jump.
The bridge. We made it. Let's get to work.
I'm taking extra care when killing grunts that are carrying fuel rod guns here because we're in tight quarters and their weapons explode like miniature plasma grenades upon being dropped, which can trigger grenade chain reactions. The reason it explodes is probably due to the fact that the fuel rod gun was cut from CE campaign originally, and the devs probably wanted an excuse as to why the player can't pick it up from dead foes.
The ship was heavily damaged when it crashed. Head to the cryo chamber. You should be able to get to the engine room through there.
I opened the fight with a plasma grenade in this doorway to try to take out as many flood as possible initially, but I don't use them afterwards because I'm afraid of the chain reactions from the grenades that are piling up on the deck to the left. Although I probably should have just thrown one and ran all the way back to the bridge corridor, because I'm getting pretty overwhelmed here. And that right there is a prime example of the busted hitbox on the Combat Forms melee swipe. Yeah, just skip that fight by running right across the hallway. Sometimes there's a shotgun flood that'll chase you, so be on guard for that. Here I'm using the plasma grenade EMP to kill as many sentinels as possible. And then I'm going to take the time to kill all these popcorn flood here because I actually died by trying to crouch under this door and started fighting these sentinels and just got absolutely melted by these guys, so it was a very unpleasant surprise at the very end of the run when I thought I had it. Like, I thought I was on the move enough, but I wasn't. I just happened to get unlucky by getting shot by both sentinels at the same time as having all of the popcorn flood landing on me. Take out that shotgun guy on the left for safety. And then this tunnel, you just want to throw grenades when it's clear, and stay back just in case they either drop grenades back there or they're a more fatty flood. And then you want to run through as aggressively as possible to stop the spawners. You know, obviously without putting yourself in danger. I got kind of pinged by those fatty flood there, but it wasn't too bad. But generally you want to keep them suppressed with grenades and then run through as soon as it's safe. Extra frags here, which are really nice for an upcoming trick where you just skip a little bit of the engineering level. And then combo these two spec obsoletes before they have a chance to react. And just run by the hunters. From what I'm able to gather, the way this section works is the enemy spawns are on a timer that doesn't start ticking down until after you see this letterbox pop up.
Engine room located.
This grenade jump saves a few seconds of running around to the ramp at the far end of the room, which is significant because it gives you the chance to blow up a couple of extra reactor vents before the floods start attacking you, which also can make a difference between an easy engineering and a huge pain in the ass engineering.
To destroy Halo. Don't worry, I have access to all of the reactor schematics and procedures.
After you hit the first switch to open the exhaust coupling, look straight down and you'll be able to see if the vents are opened or closed. If they're open, I'll usually drop to the middle pipe and shoot it immediately, otherwise I'll run to the other switch, wait a moment, then toggle that, and then hop to the middle pipe and destroy both vents at once. I find that this method significantly cuts down on waiting around for those vent panels to open.
I recommend a grenade or rocket. If you run out of explosives, there is an armory station located near the engine room's entrance. Analyzing. Fusion reactor number 1 destabilized.
And I get lucky and I don't have to fight the sentinels, so I can just run out of here. But if they do spawn, just run into one of these hallways and it will despawn the sentinels and you can run back in and finish what you were doing. Here there's a squad of spec ops. I just spam them with grenades and rockets. Really worried about either getting stuck by the spec ops elite or setting off a chain of grenade explosions. Luckily that doesn't happen here. I'll just play really conservatively by standing at the back end of that hallway. If you make it this far, congratulations, you're just about in the clear. There's just a couple of long driving sections with the Warthog where you have to be careful to avoid flipping it, because you can either splatter yourself or just make yourself vulnerable to packs of roaming enemies. The obstacles are really the biggest issue for the most part. The enemies themselves aren't really aggressive enough to engage you as you're driving past them because they're preoccupied with fighting each other. It should just take you a few practice runs to memorize a safe path that you can follow consistently.
Things are getting noisy down there. Everything okay?
Negative. We have a wildcat destabilization.
There's a couple of health kits next to the hog if you need a heal.
More damage than we thought.
Analyzing.
And then I'm stopping here to take out the Spec Ops squad with a rocket before continuing on, because I'm worried about the fuel rod grunts either shooting me or catching me in the self-destruct blast. Just playing it extra safe, because I hadn't yet made it this far in the run.
100 million degrees. Don't leave when it blows.
For this first section, just take the middle path. To be honest, it's really hard to die here. You'd have to be pretty unlucky to have anything really unrecoverable happen, as long as you're paying attention. So just relax and enjoy the ride. You could do a better job than I do driving the Warthog to save you some time. See, I'm a little disappointed there with the head shake. The path to either the left or right is going to be the smoothest because you don't have to worry about enemy attacks or obstacles up here on this catwalk. In this tunnel, you're going to wait for the second ramp and then turn hard left and go through this shortcut. And then once again take the path to the left or right for the same reasons. And then in the fourth section, you just want to go through the middle, over the surface here.
Position here.
Cortana to Echo 419.
Echo 419! She's gone. Calculating alternate escape route. Ship's inventory shows one long-term fighter is still docked in Launch Bay 7. If we move now, we can make it.
Now there's a big jump coming up, which I thought about maybe trying out the cursor down method for keeping the Warthog level over jumps that I talked about in the opening, but the 360 swag technique is just way too cool to pass up. It's the widely accepted method for getting across the gap without missing or flipping, and it also looks pretty badass as you flex on your almost completed Deathless run.
Up ahead, there's a gap
way it seems to work for me is to wait for the front of the Warthog to just about reach the edge of the platform, then smoothly rotate the camera to the left or right. In my experience, if you're too early with the turn or you turn too fast, you can end up missing the platform completely. So don't do that. Not the best way to capstone your legendary Deathless run, that's for sure. Of course, Halo Checkpoint Manager is your friend for practicing this trick as well.
Move! We need to get aboard now!
I was a little too aggressive with that. I usually try to land the Warthog a little closer, which turns out to be kind of a bad idea because now I'm totally vulnerable. I almost get stuck here by that spec obsolete. But the Halo gods finally take mercy on me and I'm able to finish the run. After, I don't know, 100 attempts, I finally get it. I had to check that I was still recording there, I was kind of paranoid.
Here we go.
So yeah, that's that. I had a lot of fun learning the run in hindsight, though at the time it definitely tested my sanity. I probably died about 50 or 60 times, usually on Pillar Bottom due to just general recklessness. I'm going to be uploading a video that documents all of my failures and some highlights to go along with this commentary and the main run itself. My misery and incompetence should be good for a laugh at least. I hope the commentary and trick guides are going to be helpful to you, even if you're not necessarily a new Halo CE player. Since I'm a casual Halo player, the idea was to bring a new perspective to people who are also maybe getting interested in doing challenge runs. I put a lot of effort into making the visual elements as clear as possible for communicating what works about these tricks. It took far more time editing these videos, that is, the highlights video and the commentary guide, than it took to actually practice the tricks and get a completed Deathless run, since I had to learn video production essentially from scratch. I hope I was able to produce a decent contribution to all the wisdom that's been accumulating around this game for over 20 years.
Scanning.
Of course, the references are still completely valid. Like I said before, it's usually important to see a couple of different example strategies for how to pull off a trick or get through a difficult combat section, and then make that work for you in the context of your own playstyle.
We had no choice.
Anyways, give this run a shot if you're feeling brave and have some extra time on your hands, and let me know how it goes in the comments. Thanks for watching.